Thanks for staying with us. We still have our guest, Ambassador Jeffo, here with us. Sir, you said earlier something about the fact that the dialogue we're expecting to happen soon shouldn't necessarily involve the reinstatement of the deposed president of Niger. However, do you think if they consider that, the body language, therefore, of ECOWAS would be like they are validating a coup, or they're saying it's okay for you to remove the president undemocratically? I mean, for them to actually make it look at it is fine for a country to go ahead to have a coup to remove a president. Don't you think that would totally invalidate the entirety of democracy?
No. Thank you for having me back. I did not actually say that the idea of restating the president, the Ousted, should be off the table. I simply said it should not be the top priority, should not be the main focus. The main focus should be the return of democratic rule in Niger Republic. And the way that could be is put it in focus that ECOWAS wants to be a democratically governed region. Already you have Mali, you have Burkina Faso, you have Guinea, where governments have been removed and some form of military administration is taking over. Which means that it is not only Niger. These other countries also have to return to democratic rule. So placing democracy ahead of the individual is more important than simply insisting that the removed president must be returned to power as a precondition for democracy to reign in Niger Republic.
Okay.
That is the difference there.
Right.
So the state is more important than any individual.
All right.
Okay, so...
in a democracy, yes.
Ambassador, I wanted to ask you, thank you for going into what my question was going to be around the fact that we've had Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea, and now Niger. These are 4 countries that are within West Africa, and they have all gone through military coup. But if we look at what has happened in Mali, we look at what has happened in Burkina Faso and Guinea, it hasn't brought about any form of peace or stability to the people. We've actually had increase in violence and increase in economic crisis and insecurity within those countries. So would you say, and I remember when we were talking to, we had a conversation last week, in the interview, the answer of why we should make, Nigeria is asking ECOWAS should make a more serious move was because probably if we had made a more serious move when one of the other 3 countries had gone through a coup, we probably wouldn't have it continue like that. So, 1, are we doing this to stem the consistent flow of coups? 2, do we want to have what is happening in Mali, where we're having more warlords and people have become, they've been unable to institute democracy. Do we want to have that so close to the Nigerian border? And what would you say the military intervention should look like in ensuring there is peace within Niger?
In fact, I can say this upfront. For as long as these contradictions exist in our democracy, in our governments, the chances of coups of some form of anomy taking place in these countries is virtually guaranteed. Coups are not the solution to these problems we have in Africa. But those fundamental issues should be addressed. And I think ECOWAS is up to the stage in which it should begin to address the real underlying causes of coups. What prompts young people to feel so disconnected with government, so disenchanted with the system that they want change and they want it now? We
Sir,
have enumerated some of them.
Sir, are you sorry,
we
please.
do not think. Go ahead.
Is it really the young people that are wanting this, or their influences? Because we're hearing there are influences from other developed countries, from the West, some countries in the West that are funding this crisis that is consistently happening within West Africa.
You know, it's a bit of an irony to say that 60 years or more after independence, a country of people who are informed and exposed to the very complexities of modern society are still subject to being teleguided by foreign powers and foreign agents to destabilize their own societies and their own countries. Who wants to do that? Who wants to do that? So even if there are foreign agents and elements who wish to destabilize African countries, they have an objective, they have a purpose. That purpose is to destabilize us and then exploit us. It is not to help us. So it doesn't become anyone who wants to be a leader to say he's influenced by France or by America or by China or by anybody else to disrupt and destabilize his own country so that those countries could come and have their way. So much as that happens, that is the business of government to ensure that those loopholes which detractors exploit in order to persuade the population to rise up against government, they are closed and covered up. So at this stage, we can no longer accept these excuses of, foreign elements and foreign influence and the interventions are the reason for all of this.
All right.
Yeah. Sir, so now, my question is, I'm a regular Nigerian living in my house quietly. All of a sudden, Niger is all over the news, you know. And as a regular Nigerian, I'm going through issues already in my country with Boko Haram, all sorts of insurgencies and crime, economic crisis as well. Why isn't the way to address it be shut the borders and focus on my country and we'll move on? Fortify my country as much as I can militarily around the border and move on. How would that work for us as a country or work against us?
No, you'll be dreaming of a life that doesn't exist anymore. Some kind of fortress Nigeria, in which the things you do in Nigeria are autarkic. Nigeria produces everything it consumes. We had that kind of argument. Nigeria is totally self-dependent on this. I can tell you, there's no country in the world that can live like that. Even the very practicality of it, if there was any benefit in any autarky, how would you achieve it? Between Niger and Nigeria, you have something over 1,000 miles of border, something like that. How would you make that closure? Moreover, countries do not become prosperous. They do not become stable or secure simply because they shut themselves in. No, that is why you have diplomatic relations with other countries. That's why you need the understanding that exists between countries in terms of trade, in terms of investment, in terms of doing business. In other words, what we want is a relationship with other countries that is mutually beneficial to both participants. And I can tell you, in ECOWAS, contrary to what many people think and say, Nigeria has almost 400 firms, companies, corporations doing business in the West African sub-region. And Nigeria has over 10,000 goods in the West African sub-regional market.
Right.
And that is only the formal trade. That is only formal business. Nobody is taking account of the informal transactions. So if you close these borders and operate the Fortress America, the millions of people who depend on this relationship with other countries in the sub-region, how would they end their living? How would they live?
Okay.
Right. So what lessons do you think our political leaders can take away from these recurrent coups happening on the continent? Is it a wake-up call to them to, do right? Because it's looking as though these coups are beginning to happen close to home. What lessons do you think our political leaders can take away from this?
In fact, I have opined elsewhere that this series of coups open a window of opportunity. Many people might find this shocking, but it opens a window of opportunity for African leaders in general, ECOWAS leaders in particular, to take advantage of this seeming state of anomy and chaos and go into serious introspection, ask themselves questions. Are we providing the leadership that our countries and our sub-region need? Or do we need to do some fundamental changes? First of all, in the content of our democracy, in the way we process democratic principles, and in the way we deliver the goods and services that a democratic country should provide to its people.
Right.
And the beginning of that could even be this conversation with a country like France, which we have said, I have heard some people say France should apologize to Africa for colonialism and neo-colonialist exploitation. But I don't think apologies are enough.
Right.
African leaders should grow the spine to make demands of former colonial countries who are still practicing neo-colonial governance of Africa. That's indirect rule of African countries, actually. To make, you want to call it reparations, but I will call it pay what they owe Africa.
All right, we have to wrap up, sir.
That takes courage. Yes.
Yeah, we have to wrap up with you, but I must ask for your advice to the current president, because he's less than 3 months, and we're talking about economic crisis, removal of subsidy, floating of the naira, people are in hardship, and now there is our neighbors are having a coup, and he obviously there's a lot of pressure on him to, to show leadership as the chairman of ECOWAS. What would you think? What should his state of mind be at this time? Is it are these quick wins for him to, as a new president, or what do you think he should do in relation to relationships going forward?
In fact, the first thing I think the president must not do is allow Nigeria to be dragged into any military conflict, any military war, any military intervention or incursion into any other African country at this time. And the reasons are very simple. Actually, any offensive action in a country like Niger will boomerang so heavily on Nigeria, given that up to 9 states of Nigeria have their kith and kin in Niger Republic. And the ties between them is something nobody can shut down easily. That is one thing in the foreign policy area the president would not allow to happen. If there is any foreign push to start a military action in any African country, it should not be done, because we would not perceive it as fighting for the good of Nigeria or fighting for the good of Nigerians or ECOWAS. People will interpret it as fighting for the good of the West and France. That is one. In the domestic area, the issues are very clear. Before actions are taken on fundamental issues like removal of subsidies, whether from fuel or from foreign exchange and all of that, there is need for these things to go through those slow, bureaucratic processes which ensure that, yes, actions may not be as fast as they could be, but the field of the unexpected consequences is reduced drastically when these things go through formal processing.
Yes, thank you so much. We've been speaking with Ambassador Ejiofor. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us this morning, Ambassador Humphrey Ejiofor, the former permanent representative of Nigeria to United Nations. We're going to go on a break now. When we come back, we continue with the show. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.